Hello and welcome to Nightmare Lullabies. As you settle in for the night, prepare to be immersed in a world of eerie whispers and unsettling tales, designed to both chill and soothe. Now close your eyes, relax, and let the darkness carry you away. And if these nightly tales captivate you, feel free to join our community for more whispered secrets. Evelyn Marwood stood in the cramped kitchen of her modest Chicago home on South Damon Avenue, the winter chill seeping through the cracked windows on December 28, 1956, the faint scent of pine from a small, crooked Christmas tree in the corner mingling with the stale air of worry, her gray eyes darting to the clock on the wall as its hands ticked past midnight, each second a sharp stab of dread in her chest. At 38, the single mother of four felt her heart pound with a fear she couldn't shake. Her daughters Barbara, 15, and Patricia, 13, still not home from the Brighton Theater where they had gone to see Elvis Presley's Love Me Tender for the third time that month. Evelyn had given them strict instructions to be back by 11:45 p.m., their curfew a non-negotiable rule in the Marwood household, etched into their routine after years of raising her children alone since her husband, Victor Marwood, had walked out on them a decade ago, leaving her to scrape by on a seamstress's wages in the rough McKinley Park neighborhood. The streets outside were silent, the snow falling softly, blanketing the city in an eerie stillness that seemed to swallow sound itself. The glow of streetlights diffused into a hazy blur through the frosted window panes. Evelyn's voice trembled as she spoke to her eldest son, Joseph, 17, who stood by the door, his lanky frame tense, his dark hair disheveled from running his hands through it in frustration, his brown eyes reflecting the same worry that gnawed at her. "They should have been here, Joseph. They're never late. Not like this. Something's wrong. I feel it in my bones, deep down where a mother knows things her mind can't explain." She clutched a faded dish towel, the fabric worn thin from years of use, her fingers twisting it into knots as she paced the linoleum floor, her worn house slippers scuffing against the cold surface, her mind racing with memories of her girls, Barbara's bright smile, her love for Elvis, how she'd begged to wear her new red scarf to the theater, and Patricia's giggle, her insistence on tagging along with her older sister. The two of them inseparable, their voices a constant melody in the Marwood home, a melody now replaced by a suffocating silence. Joseph nodded, his jaw tight, his voice steady despite the worry etched into his young face. "I'll go look for them, Ma. They probably stayed for the second showing. You know how they love Elvis. They've been singing Love Me Tender all week, driving us up the wall with it. Barbara even tried to do his hip shake at dinner last night." He forced a smile, trying to ease her fears, but it didn't reach his eyes, his hands already reaching for his coat, a hand-me-down from a neighbor. It's wool frayed at the cuffs, but warm enough for the snowy night. Evelyn's hands wrung the dish towel harder, her voice breaking as she replied. "December 28, 1956, 12:15 a.m. Barbara and Patricia, they're missing. I can't shake this feeling. I need to call the police. I can't wait anymore. Not with this snow, not with the streets so dark, not with the stories I've heard about girls disappearing in this city." She shuffled to the rotary phone on the kitchen counter, its black plastic cold to the touch, her fingers trembling as she dialed the Chicago Police Department, her words spilling out in a rush. "My girls, Barbara and Patricia Grimes, they went to the Brighton Theater. They're not home. They're only 15 and 13. Please find them. They're my babies. They're all I have." The officer on the line, Detective Roland Ashwood, 42, a seasoned investigator with a gravelly voice and a reputation for dogged determination, assured her they'd send a patrol, his tone calm but tinged with the weariness of a man who'd seen too many late-night calls turn tragic. "We'll check the theater, Mrs. Marwood. They might still be there. Don't worry yet. Kids lose track of time, especially with a heartthrob like Elvis on the screen." Evelyn hung up, her hands shaking, her mind racing with possibilities, each one darker than the last. Had they gotten lost in the snow? Had they met with an accident? Or had something worse befallen them? Something she couldn't bear to name? She turned to her younger daughter, Loretta, 11, who sat on the threadbare couch in the living room, clutching a worn teddy bear with one missing eye, her wide blue eyes filled with fear, her voice a whisper. "Where are they, Ma?" "They promised to tell me about Elvis. They said they'd be back to tuck me in. Barbara always sings me a lullaby, and Patricia makes funny faces to make me laugh." Evelyn knelt beside her, pulling her into a tight embrace, her voice soft but strained. "They'll be home soon, sweetheart. They're just late. The police will find them, I promise. We just have to wait a little longer." But the promise felt hollow, the weight of her fear pressing down on her chest like a lead weight, her thoughts spiraling to the dangers of Chicago's streets. The stories she'd heard of girls going missing, never to return, their names whispered in hushed tones by neighbors who crossed themselves as they spoke, their faces pale with the kind of fear that lingered long after the words were said. Evelyn thought of the headlines in the Chicago Tribune over the years, stories of abductions, of predators lurking in the shadows, their crimes unsolved, their victims' families left to grieve without answers. She thought of her own struggles, the long hours she worked at the garment factory on the west side, her fingers raw from sewing, her back aching from bending over the machines, all to keep a roof over her children's heads, to give them a better life than she'd had, a life where they could go to the movies, laugh with their friends, dream of a future beyond the gray streets of McKinley Park. Joseph returned at 1 a.m., his boots caked with snow, his face pale, his breath coming in short gasps from the cold, his voice tight. "The theater's closed, Ma. I checked the whole block, asked some kids hanging around outside a diner. They saw Barbara and Patricia leave around 9:30 p.m., said they were laughing, heading toward the bus stop on Archer Avenue. But no one saw them after that. It's like they vanished into the snow." Evelyn's knees buckled, her hand clutching the back of a wooden chair for support, its varnish chipped from years of use, her voice a sob. December 28, 1956, 1:15 a.m. They left the theater. They were supposed to take the bus. "But they're not here. Where are they, Joseph? Where could they have gone?" Joseph shook his head, his hands clenched into fists, his voice low. "I don't know, Ma, but I'll go back out. I'll check the bus route. Maybe they got off at the wrong stop, got turned around in the snow. It's coming down hard out there. Visibility's almost nothing." He grabbed his coat again, the door slamming behind him as he ventured back into the night, leaving Evelyn and Loretta alone, the silence of the house broken only by the faint ticking of the clock and the soft whimper of Loretta's cries, her small body trembling against Evelyn's side. Evelyn sat on the couch, pulling Loretta onto her lap, rocking her gently as she stared at the Christmas tree, its lights flickering weakly, the ornaments a mix of handmade paper stars and a few glass baubles she'd saved up to buy years ago, each one a memory of happier times, of Christmases when her family was whole, when Victor was still there, before he'd left her for another woman, before the weight of raising 4 children alone had settled on her shoulders. She thought of Barbara and Patricia, how they'd been so excited to see Elvis, how they'd saved their allowance for weeks to buy the tickets, how they'd spent the afternoon getting ready, Barbara brushing her long brown hair until it shone, Patricia twirling in her favorite blue dress, the two of them giggling as they planned their night, their voices a symphony of joy that now echoed in Evelyn's mind like a ghost. She thought of the last thing Barbara had said before they left, her voice bright. "Don't worry, Ma, we'll be back before you know it. We'll tell you all about Elvis. Maybe we'll even get a poster." And Patricia had chimed in, her eyes sparkling. "I'm gonna marry him someday, Ma, just you wait." By 2 a.m., Detective Roland Ashwood arrived at the Marwood home, his heavy coat dusted with snow, his face grim, his notebook open in his calloused hands, his badge glinting in the dim light of the living room lamp, his presence a stark reminder of the gravity of the situation. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with a weathered face that spoke of years on the force, his dark eyes sharp but softened by a flicker of compassion as he looked at Evelyn, who stood to greet him, her hands still clutching the dish towel, her voice a desperate plea. "Have you found them, Detective? Please tell me you found my girls?" Roland shook his head, his voice low. "I'm sorry to say, Mrs. Marwood, the theater's empty. We spoke to the usher, a kid named Tommy Vale, 16. He saw Barbara and Patricia leave around 9:30 p.m., said they were with a group of friends, but no one knows where they went after. They didn't stay for the second showing. They were last seen heading toward the bus stop." Evelyn's breath caught, her voice trembling. "Did Tommy see anything else, anyone with them, anything at all, anything that might tell us where they went?" Roland flipped through his notes, his brow furrowing as he read. He mentioned a boy older, maybe 18 or 19, hanging around them, said he had dark hair, a leather jacket, but Tommy didn't know him, thought he might have been from the west side, said the boy seemed to be watching the girls, maybe even following them, but he didn't think much of it at the time. Kids are always hanging around the theater on a Friday night. Evelyn's mind raced, her thoughts fixating on the boy in the leather jacket. Who was he? Had he followed her girls? Had he lured them away with promises of adventure, or something darker? She thought of Barbara's recent behavior, how she'd been secretive, blushing when Evelyn asked about her day, mentioning a boy named Sable Thorne, 19, who worked at a diner near the theater. A boy Evelyn had never met but didn't trust, his reputation whispered about by neighbors as a troublemaker. A boy who'd been in and out of trouble with the law, arrested once for petty theft, but never charged with anything serious. She shared her fears with Roland, her voice trembling. December 28, 1956, 2:30 a.m. Barbara. She'd been talking about a boy, Sable Thorne, 19, works at the diner on 35th Street. I didn't like him. Thought he was too old for her, too rough. The neighbors say he's trouble. Do you think he could have done something to my girls? Roland's eyes narrowed, his pen scratching against his notebook as he wrote down the name. We'll bring him in for questioning, Mrs. Marwood. See if he knows anything, if he was at the theater tonight. But we can't jump to conclusions. Not yet. We need to follow every lead, no matter how small. He paused, his gaze softening. I know this is hard, but we're doing everything we can. I've got my best men on this. We'll find your girls, I promise you that. The police launched a full-scale search, their flashlights cutting through the snowy streets of McKinley Park, officers knocking on doors, waking neighbors who peered out with bleary eyes, their voices hushed as they spoke of the Grimes girls. The sisters known for their love of Elvis, their laughter echoing down the block on warmer days, their absence now a gaping wound in the tight-knit community. Roland coordinated with his team, sending patrols to check the bus routes, the alleys, the parks, anywhere two girls might have gone, his mind racing with possibilities. Had they been abducted? Had they run into trouble? Or had they simply gotten lost in the storm? Their sense of direction thrown off by the heavy snow that now blanketed the city, turning familiar streets into a maze of white. A bus driver, Walter Finch, 45, reported seeing two girls matching their description boarding a CTA bus toward Archer Avenue around 9:45 p.m. But he couldn't be certain, his memory clouded by the late hour and the flurry of passengers that night. They looked like sisters, one taller, one smaller, both in coats, giggling about something. The older one had a red scarf, I think. But I can't swear it was them. It was a busy night, lots of kids coming from the theater. Rumors began to swirl through the neighborhood, whispered over fences and in corner stores, each one more chilling than the last. Some said the girls had been seen with an older boy. Others claimed a drifter had been spotted near the theater. A man with a scar across his cheek, his eyes cold, his presence unsettling. A figure who'd been seen begging for change on the corner of 35th Street earlier that week. A neighbor, Mrs. Alara Thorne, 52, Sable's aunt, told police she'd seen a car idling near the bus stop around 10 p.m. A dark sedan with a dented fender, its driver obscured by the falling snow, but she hadn't thought much of it at the time. I figured it was someone waiting for a friend, maybe a parent picking up their kids, but now, with the girls missing, I wonder if I should have called it in sooner, if I could have stopped whatever happened. Roland took her statement, his gut telling him the car was a lead worth pursuing. But the snow had buried any tracks, the city's streets a blank canvas hiding the truth, the sedan's description too vague to narrow down in a city of millions. Evelyn clung to hope, her hands clasped in prayer, her voice raw as she spoke to Loretta, who had fallen asleep on the couch, her teddy bear clutched tight, her small body curled into a ball, her breathing soft but uneven, as if even in sleep she sensed the weight of her sister's absence. December 28, 1956, 3 a.m. The police are searching, but nothing. My girls, they're out there in the cold. I need them back. I need to know they're safe. I need to hold them again. She thought of Barbara's smile, how it lit up a room, her love for Elvis, how she'd saved her allowance for weeks to buy a record player, playing Hound Dog, until the needle wore out, and Patricia's giggle, her habit of sneaking extra cookies from the jar, her insistence on tagging along with Barbara everywhere. The two of them a pair, their bond unbreakable, their absence now a void that threatened to swallow Evelyn whole. She thought of the last time she'd seen them, standing in the doorway, Barbara in her red scarf, Patricia in her blue dress, their faces alight with excitement, their voices a chorus of promises. We'll be back soon, Ma. Don't worry, we love you. Roland stayed with Evelyn until dawn, his radio crackling with updates from his team, each one a dead end. The bus route led nowhere, the alleys were empty, the parks silent, the snow covering any footprints, any signs of struggle, any clue that might lead them to the girls. He watched Evelyn pace, her hands twisting the dish towel into knots, her face pale, her eyes red from crying, her voice a whisper. December 28, 1956, 5 a.m. No sign of them, Roland. What if they're hurt? What if someone took them? What if I never see them again? What if I failed them as a mother? Roland placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice firm but kind. We'll find them, Mrs. Marwood. I promise you we won't stop looking, not until we know what happened, not until we bring them home to you. But as the first light of dawn broke over the snowy city, casting long shadows across South Damon Avenue, Roland's promise felt as fragile as the ice forming on the windows, the mystery of Barbara and Patricia Grimes deepening with each passing hour. The city's silence a heavy shroud over the Marwood home, a silence that whispered of secrets buried beneath the snow, secrets that might never be uncovered. Evelyn Marwood sat in her Chicago home on South Damon Avenue. The morning light of January 22, 1957, filtering weakly through the frosted windows, casting long shadows across the living room where she had barely slept in the 25 days since her daughters, Barbara, 15, and Patricia, 13, had vanished after a night at the Brighton Theater. At 38, the single mother of 4 felt the weight of those endless days like a physical burden, her gray eyes hollow from sleepless nights, her hands trembling as she clutched a cup of cold coffee, the bitter taste a faint distraction from the ache in her chest. The house was quieter now, the absence of Barbara and Patricia a gaping wound that seemed to grow with each passing hour, their laughter replaced by the soft sobs of Loretta, 11, who sat on the couch, her teddy bear clutched tight, her voice a whisper. Ma, are they coming home today? You said the police would find them. It's been so long. Evelyn forced a smile, her voice strained. Soon, sweetheart, the police are still looking. They'll find them, I know they will. But the words felt like ash in her mouth, her hope fraying with each day that brought no news, each night that ended with the same empty silence. The search for the Grimes sisters had consumed McKinley Park, the neighborhood a hive of activity as volunteers combed the snowy streets, their breath visible in the frigid air, their voices calling out for Barbara and Patricia in a desperate chorus that echoed through the alleys and parks. Detective Roland Ashwood, 42, had led the effort with a dogged determination, his team working around the clock, following every lead, no matter how small, their radios crackling with updates that too often led nowhere. They had questioned dozens of people, friends, neighbors, theater staff, bus drivers, chasing down sightings that turned out to be false, their frustration mounting as the snow continued to fall, burying any trace of the girls, the city's vastness a cruel obstacle in their search. Roland had visited Evelyn nearly every day, his face growing grimmer with each passing visit, his notebook filled with notes that offered no answers, his voice steady but heavy. We're doing everything we can, Mrs. Marwood. We've got the whole department on this. We won't stop until we find them. That morning at 8 a.m., the phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through the silence of the Marwood home like a knife, startling Evelyn so badly that she spilled her coffee, the dark liquid pooling on the linoleum floor, a stark contrast to the pale, worn surface. She stumbled to the phone, her heart pounding, her hands shaking as she lifted the receiver, her voice a desperate whisper. Hello, this is Evelyn Marwood. Have you found my girls? On the other end, Roland Ashwood's voice was low, his tone heavy with a weight that made Evelyn's stomach drop. Mrs. Marwood, it's Detective Ashwood. I need you to sit down. We found 2 bodies in Willow Springs, along a road near German Church Road. We think they might be Barbara and Patricia, but we need you to come identify them. I'm so sorry to have to ask this of you. Evelyn's knees buckled, the receiver slipping from her hand, clattering against the counter as she sank to the floor, a keening wail escaping her lips, the sound raw and primal, a mother's grief unleashed in a single, shattering moment. Loretta ran to her side, her small hands tugging at Evelyn's arm, her voice trembling. Ma, what's wrong? What did he say? Are they okay? Evelyn couldn't answer, her sobs racking her body, her hands clutching at the linoleum as if it could anchor her against the tidal wave of pain that threatened to drown her. She thought of Barbara's red scarf, Patricia's blue dress, the way they'd laughed as they left for the theater, their voices a melody that now echoed in her mind like a cruel taunt, a reminder of what she'd lost, of what she might never hold again. Joseph, 17, who had been shoveling snow from the front walk, burst through the door, his face pale, his boots leaving wet tracks on the floor as he saw his mother on the ground, Loretta crying beside her. Ma, what happened? What's going on? Evelyn looked up at him, her eyes red, her voice a broken whisper. January 22nd, 1957, 8:05 a.m. They found bodies, Joseph, in Willow Springs. Roland thinks it's them. He needs me to identify them. I can't do this. I can't see them like that. Joseph knelt beside her, his arms wrapping around her, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. I'll go with you, Ma. You don't have to do this alone. We'll go together. We'll face it together, whatever it is. Evelyn nodded, her tears soaking into his coat, her mind a whirlwind of fear and denial. She couldn't believe it was her girls, not her Barbara, not her Patricia, not the daughters who'd filled her life with light, who'd promised to be home before midnight. Roland arrived at the Marwood home within the hour, his heavy coat dusted with fresh snow, his face etched with a sorrow that mirrored Evelyn's own, his badge glinting in the dim light of the living room lamp as he stood in the doorway, his hat in his hands. Mrs. Marwood, I'm so sorry. I wish I didn't have to bring you this news, but we need to be sure. The bodies were found by a construction worker, Leonard Prescott, 29. He was clearing snow from the road when he saw them. They were in a ditch, covered by a thin layer of snow. We've taken them to the coroner's office, but we need you to confirm if it's them. Evelyn stood, her legs unsteady, her voice a whisper. January 22nd, 1957, 9 a.m. I have to go, I have to see, but I don't want it to be them, Roland. Please tell me it's not them. Tell me there's been a mistake. Roland's eyes softened, but he didn't reply, his silence a confirmation of the grim reality they were about to face. The drive to the coroner's office in downtown Chicago was a blur. The city's streets a maze of snow and ice, the gray sky pressing down like a shroud. The hum of the police car's engine a low drone that did little to drown out Evelyn's racing thoughts. Joseph sat beside her in the back seat, his hand gripping hers, his face pale but resolute, his voice low. It might not be them, Ma. We have to hold on to that. We have to believe they're still out there. Maybe they ran away. Maybe they're hiding somewhere. We can't give up yet. Evelyn nodded, but her heart felt heavy, her mind replaying every moment of the past 25 days. The sleepless nights, the endless searches, the prayers she'd whispered in the dark, begging for her girls to come home, begging for a miracle that now seemed out of reach. At the coroner's office, a cold, sterile building on West Harrison Street, Evelyn and Joseph were led to a small room where the bodies lay under white sheets, the air thick with the scent of antiseptic and death, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glow that made Evelyn's skin crawl. The coroner, Dr. Walter Finch, 50, a man with a kind face but tired eyes, spoke softly. Mrs. Marwood, I'm so sorry for your loss. We'll make this as quick as possible. I just need you to look and tell us if these are your daughters. He pulled back the sheet on the first body, revealing a girl with long brown hair, her face pale and bruised, her eyes closed, her body stiff with the cold of death. Evelyn gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, her voice a scream. Barbara, oh God, it's Barbara, my baby, my girl. What happened to her? What did they do to her? She collapsed against Joseph, her sobs echoing in the small room, her hands reaching out as if she could pull her daughter back from the abyss, as if her touch could bring her back to life. Dr. Finch pulled back the second sheet, revealing Patricia, her smaller frame just as pale, her blonde hair matted with dirt, her face marked with the same bruises, her blue dress torn at the hem, a silent testament to the violence she'd endured. Evelyn's scream turned to a wail, her body shaking as she clutched Joseph, her voice a broken chant. January 22nd, 1957, 10 a.m. It's them, it's my girls, Barbara and Patricia. They're gone, they're really gone. I failed them. I let this happen. I should have gone with them. I should have kept them safe. Joseph held her tight, his own tears falling silently, his voice a whisper. It's not your fault, Ma. You couldn't have known. We'll find who did this. I swear we will. They won't get away with it. Roland stood by, his notebook open, his face a mask of professional detachment that hid the anger burning in his chest, his voice low. Dr. Finch, what can you tell us? What happened to them? How did they die? The coroner adjusted his glasses, his voice steady but heavy. Based on the preliminary examination, the girls died of shock and exposure to the cold. Their bodies were severely hypothermic, but there are signs of violence, bruises on their faces, arms, and torsos, and evidence of possible sexual assault, though we'll need further tests to confirm. The injuries suggest they were attacked before they died, likely shortly after they were taken, but the cold preserved their bodies, making it hard. To pinpoint the exact time of death, I'd estimate they've been dead for at least 2 weeks, maybe more. Evelyn's sobs grew louder, her mind reeling at the thought of her girls' suffering, of the violence they'd endured, of the cold that had claimed them in the end, her voice a whisper. January 22nd, 1957, 10:15 a.m., shock and cold. They were attacked, my babies. Someone hurt them. Someone took them from me. Why? Why would anyone do this? Roland's jaw tightened, his mind racing with the implications. Sexual assault pointed to lust as a motive. A predator who'd targeted the girls for their youth, their innocence. But the brutality of the attack suggested something more. A rage that could stem from rape. A personal grudge against the family, or even a twisted form of love. A jilted suitor who couldn't handle rejection. He turned to Evelyn, his voice gentle. Mrs. Marwood, I know this is hard, but we need to talk about anyone who might have had a reason to hurt your girls, anyone who might have been angry with them, or with you, anyone who showed too much interest in them. Can you think of anyone at all? Evelyn wiped her tears, her mind racing, her voice trembling. Barbara, she'd been talking about a boy, Sable Thorne, 19, works at the diner near the theater. I didn't like him, thought he was too old for her. The neighbors said he was trouble, arrested once for theft. I told her to stay away from him, but she was smitten, kept sneaking out to see him. Do you think he could have? Roland nodded, his pen scratching against his notebook. We'll bring Sable in for questioning, see if he has an alibi for the night they disappeared. We'll also look into any enemies your family might have had. Anyone who might have wanted to hurt you through your girls. We'll leave no stone unturned. He paused, his gaze softening. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Marwood. I wish I could have found them sooner. I wish I could have brought them home alive. But I promise you, we'll find who did this. We'll get justice for Barbara and Patricia. Evelyn nodded, her tears falling silently, her voice a whisper. January 22nd, 1957, 10:30 a.m., Sable Thorne. He's the first one you should look at. He was too close to Barbara. I didn't trust him. If he did this, I'll never forgive myself for not stopping her. The police brought Sable Thorne in for questioning that afternoon. The 19-year-old diner worker, a lanky figure with dark hair and a leather jacket, his eyes darting nervously as he sat in the interrogation room at the 9th District Station, his hands fidgeting with a pack of cigarettes, his voice defensive. I didn't do nothing to those girls, I swear. I liked Barbara, sure, we went out a few times, but I wasn't at the theater that night. I was working the late shift at the diner. You can ask my boss, Mr. Elton Vale, 45. He'll tell you I was there till midnight. Roland leaned forward, his voice sharp. We'll check your alibi, Sable, but if you're lying, if you had anything to do with this, I'll find out, and you'll pay for what you did to those girls, you understand me? Sable nodded, his face pale, his voice a whisper. I didn't hurt them. I swear, I cared about Barbara. I wouldn't do that to her. Elton Vale confirmed Sable's alibi, his voice gruff as he spoke to Roland over the phone. Sable was here, working the grill. Didn't leave till after midnight. I'm sure of it, he's a good kid. Just rough around the edges, he wouldn't hurt nobody. But Roland wasn't convinced, his gut telling him Sable knew more than he was letting on. His interest in Barbara too intense. His reputation too checkered to dismiss him so easily. He made a note to dig deeper, to look into Sable's past, to see if there were any other girls he'd been involved with, any other incidents that might point to a pattern of violence, his mind racing with the possibility that Sable's feelings for Barbara had turned dark, a twisted form of love that led to murder when she rejected him. Back at the Marwood home, Evelyn sat with Joseph and Loretta, her hands clutching a photo of Barbara and Patricia. The two girls smiling at the camera, their arms around each other, their faces alight with the joy of a summer day, a memory that now felt like a lifetime ago. She thought of the coroner's words, shock and exposure, signs of violence, possible sexual assault. And her mind recoiled, unable to fathom the horror her girls had endured, the pain they'd suffered in their final moments, the cold that had claimed them as they lay in a ditch, alone and afraid. She thought of the motivin that Roland had mentioned, lust, a predator who'd seen her girls as easy targets, their youth a lure for a monster. Rake, someone who might have wanted to hurt her family, to punish her for some unknown slight. Or love, a boy like Sable, whose affection had turned to obsession, whose rejection had turned to rage. She whispered to the photo, her voice breaking. January 22nd, 1957, 3 p.m. I'll find who did this to you, my babies. I'll make sure they pay. I'll never stop fighting for you, I promise. The neighborhood buzzed with the news of the discovery. The streets of McKinley Park filled with whispers and tears, neighbors gathering on stoops and in corner stores, their voices hushed as they spoke of the Grimes sisters. Their deaths a tragedy that struck at the heart of the community, a reminder of the dangers that lurked beneath the surface of their city. Some spoke of Sable Thorne, his reputation as a troublemaker now a dark shadow over his name, their voices tinged with suspicion. I always knew that boy was no good, too old for Barbara, too rough. I bet he did it. I bet he couldn't take no for an answer. Others whispered of darker possibilities, of a drifter who'd been seen in the area, a man with a scar across his cheek, his presence a chilling omen in the days before the girls disappeared, their voices trembling. I saw him near the theater, begging for change. His eyes were cold, like he was looking for trouble. What if he followed them? What if he's the one? Roland and his team worked tirelessly, their investigation expanding as they chased down every lead, their radios crackling with updates from the coroner's office, from witnesses, from the streets of Chicago, each piece of information a thread in a tapestry that refused to come into focus. They canvassed Willow Springs, a rural area 15 miles southwest of the city, its fields and woods a stark contrast to the urban sprawl of McKinley Park, their boots crunching through the snow as they searched for evidence, for anything that might tell them how the girls had ended up in that ditch, how they'd been taken from the theater to this desolate place. A farmer, Amos Wren, 62, reported seeing a dark sedan on German Church Road a few weeks earlier, its driver a shadowy figure who sped off when Amos approached, his voice gruff. I thought he was just passing through, but now, with the girls found here, I wonder if he was up to no good, if he was the one who left them there. Evelyn spent the day in a haze, her mind replaying the sight of her daughter's bodies, their pale faces, their bruised skin, the violence etched into their final moments, her heart breaking with every memory, every thought of what they'd endured. She thought of the life they'd had, the dreams they'd shared, Barbara's hope of becoming a teacher, her love for books, her gentle way with Loretta, Patricia's dream of being a dancer, her habit of twirling in the living room, her laughter a melody that filled the house with joy. She thought of the future they'd never have, the milestones she'd never see, graduations, weddings, grandchildren, and her grief deepened, a bottomless well that threatened to swallow her whole. She whispered to Joseph, her voice raw. January 22nd, 1957, 6 p.m. They're gone, Joseph, my girls are gone, but I won't let this be the end. I'll fight for them. I'll make sure the world knows their names. I'll make sure they're never forgotten. As night fell over Chicago, the city's lights a faint glow against the snowy sky, Roland sat at his desk at the 9th District Station, his notebook open, his mind racing with the day's findings. The coroner's report, Sable's alibi, the sedan in Willow Springs, the whispers of a drifter, the motivin that swirled around the case like a storm. He thought of Evelyn, her grief a palpable force, her determination a fire that burned through her pain, and he vowed to keep his promise, to find the truth, to bring justice for Barbara and Patricia, no matter how long it took. But as he stared at the map of Chicago on his wall, the pin marking Willow Springs a stark reminder of the girl's fate, he felt the weight of the mystery pressing down on him. The answers just out of reach, the killer still out there, hidden in the shadows of a city that held its secrets close, a city that might never give up the truth. Detective Roland Ashwood sat at his cluttered desk in the 9th District Station in Chicago, the dim light of a desk lamp casting shadows across the map of the city pinned to the wall, its surface marked with red pins that traced the movements of Barbara and Patricia Grimes on the night they disappeared, December 28, 1956, and the location where their bodies were found in Willow Springs on January 22, 1957. At 42, Roland felt the weight of the case pressing down on him, his dark eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, his hands stained with ink from the countless reports he'd written, his mind racing with the details of the investigation that had consumed his every waking moment for nearly a month. The coroner's report lay open before him, its words a grim reminder of the violence the girls had endured. Death by shock and exposure to the cold, bruises on their faces and bodies, signs of possible sexual assault. Each detail a thread in a tapestry of horror that refused to come into focus, the killer's identity still a shadow in the periphery of his vision. It was January 25, 1957, 3 days since the bodies of Barbara, 15, and Patricia, 13, had been identified by their mother, Evelyn Marwood, in the coroner's office, a moment that had shattered her world and left Roland with a burning determination to find justice for the Grimes sisters. The investigation had already taken its toll on his team, their faces etched with exhaustion as they chased down leads that too often led nowhere, their radios crackling with updates that offered little hope, their frustration mounting as the city's streets remained silent. The snow that had once buried the girls now a metaphor for the truth that seemed just out of reach. Roland had questioned Sable Thorne, 19, the diner worker who'd been seeing Barbara, but his alibi, confirmed by his boss, Elton Vale, had held up, leaving Roland with a lingering suspicion but no hard evidence to tie him to the crime, his gut telling him Sable knew more than he was letting on. His affection for Barbara, a potential motive rooted in a twisted form of love, turned to rage. Evelyn, meanwhile, sat in her home on South Damon Avenue. The silence of the house a stark contrast to the chaos of her mind. Her gray eyes staring at the Christmas tree that still stood in the corner, its lights unplugged, its ornaments a painful reminder of the holiday her girls had never returned to celebrate. At 38, the single mother of four felt as though her heart had been carved out of her chest, her hands clutching a photo of Barbara and Patricia, their smiling faces a memory that now brought only pain, their absence a void that seemed to grow with each passing day. Loretta, 11, sat beside her on the threadbare couch, her small hands twisting the ears of her teddy bear, her voice a whisper. "Ma, are the police going to catch the bad man who took Barbara and Patricia? I don't want him to come for me next." Evelyn pulled her close, her voice trembling. January 25th, 1957, 9 a.m. "They're working on it, sweetheart. Detective Ashwood promised he'd find him. He won't let anything happen to you. I won't let anything happen to you." But the words felt hollow, her fear a constant companion as she thought of the coroner's report, the violence her girls had endured, the cold that had claimed them, the killer who still walked free, a shadow in the city that had stolen her daughters. Roland's investigation took a new turn that morning when a tip came in from a neighbor, Mrs. Alara Thorne, 52, Sable's aunt, who had already mentioned seeing a dark sedan near the bus stop on the night the girls disappeared. She called the station, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Detective Ashwood, I remembered something else, something I didn't think of before, but it's been eating at me since I heard about the girls. I think it might be important." Roland leaned forward, his pen poised over his notebook, his voice sharp. "What is it, Mrs. Thorne? Anything you can tell us might help. We're running out of leads." Alara took a deep breath, her words spilling out. "Evelyn's ex-husband, Victor Marwood, he used to come around the neighborhood a few years back. Before he left her, he was always in trouble, owed money to some bad people. A bend on the west side. I heard they were looking for him last year, said he'd skipped town without paying up. What if they went after the girls to get to him, to send a message?" Roland's eyes narrowed, his mind racing with the implications. Rake as a motive, a bend targeting the girls to punish Victor for his debts. A brutal act meant to send a message to a man who'd left his family behind, a man who might not even know his daughters were dead. He thanked Alara, his voice steady. January 25th, 1957, 9:30 a.m. "We'll look into Victor Marwood. See if we can track him down. Find out if this bend had anything to do with the girls. Thank you, Mrs. Thorne. This could be the break we need." He hung up, his hands already reaching for the phone to call his contacts at the West Side Precinct, his voice urgent as he spoke to Sergeant Amos Wren, 48, a veteran officer who'd dealt with the city's underbelly for decades. "Amos, I need everything you've got on Victor Marwood. Used to live in McKinley Park, left his family about 10 years ago. Might be tied to a bend on your side of town. They could be involved in the Grimes case. I need names, locations, anything you can dig up." Amos's voice was gruff, his tone skeptical. "Victor Marwood, I remember him, small-time crook, always in over his head. Last I heard he owed money to the DiMaggio crew. A nasty bunch, they don't mess around. If he didn't pay up, they might have gone after his family. But I haven't seen him in years. Word is he skipped town, could be in Detroit by now. I'll see what I can find, but it's a long shot, Roland." Roland nodded, his jaw tight. January 25th, 1957, 10 a.m., DiMaggio crew, possible rake motive. "Victor might be in Detroit. We need to find him, see if he knows anything, if he's the reason his girls were targeted." He made a note to send officers to check known hangouts of the DiMaggio crew, their bars and gambling dens on the west side, his mind racing with the possibility that the girls' deaths were a message, a brutal act of retribution meant to settle a debt, their lives snuffed out to punish a man who'd abandoned them long ago. While Roland pursued this new lead, Evelyn received a visit from her neighbor, Mrs. Clara Sage, 60, a widow who'd lived on South Damon Avenue for decades, her face lined with the weight of years, her eyes soft with sympathy as she sat at Evelyn's kitchen table, a plate of homemade cookies between them, her voice gentle. "Evelyn, I heard about the girls. I'm so sorry. I can't imagine what you're going through. But I wanted to tell you something I didn't think much of at the time. But now, with everything that's happened, I wonder if it means something." Evelyn looked up, her hands clutching the photo of her girls, her voice a whisper. January 25th, 1957, 11 a.m. "What is it, Clara? Anything, please, I need to know." Clara took a deep breath, her hands twisting a handkerchief. "A few weeks before the girls disappeared, I saw a man hanging around the neighborhood. A drifter, I think. He had a scar across his cheek. Looked rough, like he'd been on the road a long time. I saw him talking to Victor once, outside the corner store. They seemed to be arguing. I didn't hear what they said, but Victor looked scared. What if that man came back? What if he's the one who took your girls?" Evelyn's heart raced, her mind seizing on the new information, her voice trembling. January 25th, 1957, 11:15 a.m. "A drifter with a scar, arguing with Victor. Clara, do you know his name? Did you see him again?" Clara shook her head, her voice apologetic. "I don't know his name. I only saw him that one time, but he gave me a bad feeling, like he was trouble. I wish I'd said something sooner. I wish I'd done something." Evelyn nodded, her tears falling silently, her mind racing with the possibility that this drifter was the key, a man tied to Victor, a man who might have taken her girls to settle a score, to exact rake for some unknown debt, her voice a whisper. "I'll tell Roland. He needs to know. He needs to find this man. He might be the one. He might be the monster who took my babies." Roland received Evelyn's call that afternoon, his notebook open as he listened to her recount Clara's story, his voice steady. January 25th, 1957, 1 p.m. "A drifter with a scar, seen arguing with Victor, possible connection to the DiMaggio crew. We'll put out a description. See if we can find him. Thank you, Mrs. Marwood. This could be important." He hung up, his hands already reaching for the radio to alert his team, his voice urgent. "All units, be on the lookout for a drifter, male, approximately 30 to 40 years old, scar across his cheek, possibly connected to the Grimes case, last seen in McKinley Park a few weeks ago, maybe tied to Victor Marwood and the DiMaggio crew, apprehend and bring in for questioning." The description went out across the city, officers fanning out to check flop houses, train yards, and soup kitchens, anywhere a drifter might be hiding, their eyes sharp for a man with a scar, a man who might hold the key to the girls' deaths. That evening, a break came in the case when Officer Elton Vale, 45, Sablethorne's boss at the diner, spotted a man matching the description at a soup kitchen on the south side, his voice crackling over the radio as he called it in. "Detective Ashwood, I've got a suspect, male, about 35, scar across his cheek, goes by the name Benny Bedwell. He's at the Salvation Army on 47th Street. I'm bringing him in now." Roland met Elton at the station, his eyes narrowing as he saw Benny Bedwell, a wiry man with a weathered face, his scar a jagged line across his left cheek, his clothes tattered, his hands trembling as he sat in the interrogation room, his voice low. "I didn't do nothing, I swear. I don't even know those girls. I'm just passing through. I don't want no trouble." Roland leaned forward, his voice sharp. January 25th, 1957, 7 p.m. "Benny Bedwell, we have a witness who saw you arguing with Victor Marwood a few weeks before the Grimes sisters disappeared. We know Victor owed money to the DiMaggio crew. We know you're a drifter. You fit the description of a man seen in the area, so you better start talking. What do you know about Barbara and Patricia Grimes? What did you do to them?" Benny's eyes darted nervously, his hands fidgeting with a frayed sleeve, his voice a whisper. "I knew Victor, sure, we had a deal. He owed me money, said he'd pay me back, but he never did. I got mad, we argued. But I didn't touch his girls. I didn't even know he had kids, I swear. I'm not that kind of man." Roland pressed harder, his voice rising. "You expect me to believe that, Benny? You're a drifter, you've got a record, petty theft, vagrancy, assault. You were in the area, you had a motive, rake against Victor. So tell me the truth. Did you take those girls? Did you kill them to get back at him?" Benny broke under the pressure, his voice cracking as he sobbed. January 25th, 1957, 7:30 p.m. Okay, I did it. I took the girls. I saw them at the bus stop. I was drunk. I was angry. I wanted to hurt Victor. I thought if I took his kids, he'd pay up. I didn't mean to kill them. I just wanted to scare them, but they fought back. I hit them, I left them in Willow Springs. I didn't know they'd die, I swear. I didn't mean for this to happen. Roland's heart raced, his mind reeling at the confession, his voice steady. You're under arrest, Benny, for the murder of Barbara and Patricia Grimes. We'll get a full statement. You're going to tell us everything, every detail, you understand? Benny nodded, his sobs echoing in the small room, his confession a breakthrough that seemed to crack the case wide open. A moment of triumph for Roland after weeks of dead ends. But the triumph was short-lived. The next morning, January 26, 1957, Benny recanted his confession, his voice defiant as he spoke to Roland through the bars of his cell. January 26, 1957, 8 a.m. I didn't do it, I lied, you pressured me, you kept pushing, I was scared, I thought if I said what you wanted, you'd let me go, but I didn't touch those girls. I wasn't even in McKinley Park that night. I was at a flop house on the north side. You can ask the owner, he'll tell you I was there. Roland's jaw tightened, his anger flaring at the retraction, his voice sharp. You're playing games, Benny, we'll check your alibi, but if you're lying again, if you're wasting my time, I'll make sure you regret it. Those girls deserve justice, and I'm not stopping until I get it. He sent officers to the flop house, their report confirming Benny's alibi. The owner, Walter Finch, 50, remembered Benny being there on December 28. His logbook showing Benny had paid for a bed that night. His presence accounted for from 8 p.m. until the next morning. Roland sat back at his desk, his notebook open, his mind racing with the new information. Benny's confession, his retraction, his alibi, the DiMaggio crew, Victor Marwood's debts, the rake motif that seemed to fit but lacked hard evidence, the drifter who might be a red herring, a convenient suspect in a case that refused to yield its secrets. He thought of Evelyn, her grief a palpable force, her determination to find the truth a fire that burned through her pain, and he vowed to keep digging, to follow every lead, to find the man who'd taken her girls, no matter how long it took. But as he stared at the map on his wall, the red pins a stark reminder of the girls' journey from the theater to their graves, he felt the weight of the mystery pressing down on him. The killer still out there, hidden in the shadows of a city that held its secrets close. A city that might never give up the truth. Evelyn, meanwhile, sat in her kitchen, her hands clutching a letter she'd written to Barbara and Patricia, her words a plea for forgiveness, a promise to keep fighting, her voice a whisper. January 26, 1957, 6 p.m. I'm sorry, my babies, I'm sorry I couldn't protect you, but I won't stop. I'll find who did this. I'll make sure the world knows your names. I'll make sure you're never forgotten. She thought of the drifter, of Victor's debts, of the Ben that might have targeted her girls, of the rake that might have driven their killer, and her resolve hardened, her grief a fuel that burned brighter than her fear, her love for her daughters a light that refused to be extinguished, even in the darkest of nights. Evelyn Marwood stood in her small kitchen on South Damon Avenue, the faint light of a late January morning filtering through the cracked window, the air heavy with the scent of stale coffee, and the lingering pine of a Christmas tree that had long since lost its cheer. Its needles scattered across the floor like a cruel reminder of the holiday her daughters, Barbara, 15, and Patricia, 13, had never returned to celebrate. It was January 29, 1957, a week since the bodies of her girls had been found in a snowy ditch in Willow Springs, their deaths a wound that refused to heal, their absence a void that echoed through the house, drowning out the soft hum of the city outside. At 38, Evelyn felt as though time had stopped, her gray eyes red from crying, her hands trembling as she clutched a letter she'd written to her daughters, her words a desperate plea for forgiveness, a promise to keep fighting, her voice a whisper. January 29, 1957, 8 a.m. I'm sorry, my babies, I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. I'll never stop looking for the truth. I'll never let you be forgotten. The past week had been a blur of grief and rage, the coroner's report. Death by shock and exposure, signs of violence, possible sexual assault. Playing on a loop in her mind, each detail a knife in her heart, each moment a reminder of the horror her girls had endured. Detective Roland Ashwood, 42, had kept her updated on the investigation, his voice heavy with frustration as he recounted the dead ends. Sable Thorne's alibi holding firm, the drifter Benny Bedwell's confession retracted, the DiMaggio crew a possible lead but lacking hard evidence, the rake motif tied to her ex-husband Victor Marwood still unproven. Evelyn had clung to the hope that justice would come, that the monster who'd taken her daughters would be found. But with each passing day, that hope grew thinner, her grief a weight that threatened to crush her, her guilt a constant companion as she replayed the night of December 28, 1956, over and over, wondering if she could have done something, anything, to save them. That morning, Evelyn made a decision, her voice firm as she spoke to her eldest son, Joseph, 17, who sat at the kitchen table, his face pale, his dark hair disheveled from running his hands through it in frustration. "Joseph, I need to go to Willow Springs. I need to see where they found them. I need to be where they were, to feel them, to say goodbye. I can't keep sitting here waiting for answers that might never come." Joseph looked up, his brown eyes filled with concern, his voice low. "Ma, are you sure it's going to be hard? Seeing that place, it might make things worse. I don't want you to hurt more than you already are." Evelyn nodded, her hands clutching the letter tighter, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. January 29, 1957, 8:30 a.m. "I have to do this, Joseph, for them, for me. I need to see it, I need to understand, I need to feel closer to them, even if it breaks me." Joseph agreed to drive her, his old Ford pickup rattling through the snowy streets of Chicago. The city's gray skyline a stark contrast to the rural expanse of Willow Springs, a small community 15 miles southwest of the city, its fields and woods blanketed in snow, its silence a haunting echo of the girls' final moments. They reached German Church Road by 10 a.m., the spot marked by a small cluster of police tape that fluttered in the wind. The ditch where Barbara and Patricia had been found a shallow scar in the earth, its edges softened by the snow that had fallen since their bodies were removed. Evelyn stepped out of the truck, her boots crunching against the icy ground, her breath visible in the frigid air, her hands trembling as she clutched the letter, her voice a whisper. January 29, 1957, 10 a.m. "This is it. This is where they were, my girls, my babies, left here alone in the cold. I should have been here. I should have protected them." She knelt beside the ditch, her knees sinking into the snow, her hands reaching out as if she could touch her daughters, as if she could pull them back from the abyss, her sobs echoing through the empty field, her voice raw. "Barbara, Patricia, I'm so sorry I let this happen. I should have gone with you to the theater. I should have kept you safe. I failed you both, but I'll never stop fighting for you. I'll never stop looking for the one who did this, I promise. I love you so much." Joseph knelt beside her, his arms wrapping around her, his own tears falling silently, his voice a whisper. "It's not your fault, Ma. You couldn't have known. They wouldn't want you to blame yourself. They'd want you to keep going, to keep loving us, to keep fighting for them." Evelyn nodded, her tears soaking into the snow, her hands clutching the letter as she placed it in the ditch. A small token of her love, a piece of her heart left in the place where her daughters had been found, a place that now held a piece of her soul. Meanwhile, back in Chicago, Roland Ashwood sat in the 9th District Station, his notebook open, his mind racing with the latest developments in the case. His team gathered around him as they reviewed the evidence, their faces etched with exhaustion, their voices low as they discussed the motivum that had emerged. Lust from the possible sexual assault, rake tied to Victor Marwood's debts, and now, a new possibility, one that had come to light through a tip from a neighbor, Mrs. Clara Sage, 60, who'd spoken to Evelyn earlier in the week. Clara had called the station that morning, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Detective Ashwood, I've been thinking about what I told Evelyn about the drifter, but there's something else, something I didn't mention before. I didn't think it mattered, but now, with the girls gone, I wonder if it does." Roland leaned forward, his pen poised over his notebook, his voice sharp. January 29, 1957, 11 a.m. "What is it, Mrs. Sage? Anything you can tell us might help. We're running out of leads. We need something solid." Clara took a deep breath, her words spilling out. "Elton Vale, the man who owns the diner where Sablethorne works, he lives down the street from Evelyn. He's always been a quiet sort, keeps to himself, but I saw him watching Barbara sometimes. When she'd walk by with her friends, he'd stand on his porch, just staring. I thought it was odd. He's 45, too old to be looking at a girl like that. But I didn't say anything. I didn't want to cause trouble, but now I wonder if he had something to do with it, if he was obsessed with her." Roland's eyes narrowed, his mind racing with the implications, Liefde and jalousie as motivum. A neighbor whose quiet demeanor might hide a darker obsession. A man who'd been close to the family, close enough to watch Barbara, to know her routines, to see her with Sable and burn with envy. He thanked Clara, his voice steady. January 29, 1957, 11:15 a.m. We'll bring Elton Vale in for questioning. See if there's anything to this. Thank you, Mrs. Sage. This could be important." He hung up, his hands already reaching for the radio to alert his team, his voice urgent. "All units, I need Elton Vale brought in for questioning, 45 years old, owns the diner on 35th Street, lives on South Damon Avenue. Possible suspect in the Grimes case, may have had an obsession with Barbara Grimes, apprehend and bring to the station immediately." Elton Vale was brought in that afternoon, his broad frame filling the interrogation room, his face pale, his hands fidgeting with a pack of matches as he sat across from Roland, his voice defensive. "January 29, 1957, 2 p.m. I don't know what you're talking about, Detective. I didn't do anything to those girls, I barely knew them. I just saw them around the neighborhood. That's all. I run a diner. I'm a busy man, I don't have time for this nonsense." Roland leaned forward, his voice sharp. "We have a witness, Elton, says you were watching Barbara, staring at her from your porch. You're 45, she was 15. That's not normal, that's not innocent. And you knew Sablethorne was seeing her, didn't you? You gave him an alibi. But what if you were jealous? What if you couldn't stand seeing her with him? What did you do, Elton? Did you take her? Did you hurt her and her sister to get her out of the way?" Elton's face flushed, his hands slamming on the table, his voice rising. "That's a lie. I wasn't jealous. I didn't care about Sable. I didn't care about Barbara. I might have looked at her, sure, she was a pretty girl, but that's all. I never touched her. I never even spoke to her. I swear I didn't do this. You've got the wrong man." Roland's eyes narrowed, his voice steady. "January 29, 1957, 2:15 p.m. We'll check your story, Elton, but if you're lying, if you had anything to do with this, I'll find out, and you'll pay for what you did to those girls, you understand me?" Elton nodded, his face pale, his voice a whisper. "I didn't do it, I swear. You're wasting your time. You need to look somewhere else. I'm not your guy." Roland's team searched Elton's home on South Damon Avenue, their boots tracking snow across the hardwood floors as they combed through his belongings, looking for anything that might tie him to the crime. A piece of clothing, a weapon, a memento of the girls. But they found nothing, his house a sparse, orderly space that revealed little about the man who lived there, his life a blank slate that offered no answers. They questioned his neighbors, their voices hushed as they spoke of Elton, their words painting a picture of a man who kept to himself, who rarely spoke, who watched the neighborhood from his porch with a quiet intensity that now seemed sinister in hindsight. He was always there, just watching, never said much, but you could tell he was lonely, maybe too lonely, maybe he fixated on Barbara, maybe he couldn't help himself. Back in Willow Springs, Evelyn stood by the ditch, her hands clutching a small bouquet of flowers she'd brought, their petals a stark white against the snow, a symbol of the innocence her daughters had lost, a tribute to the lives that had been stolen. She thought of the motivin Roland had mentioned, lust from the assault, rake tied to Victor's debts, and now Lifta and Jalousie, a neighbor whose quiet obsession might have turned deadly, a man who'd lived down the street, who'd seen her girls every day, who might have harbored a darkness she'd never suspected. She whispered to the flowers, her voice breaking. January 29, 1957, 3 p.m. "I don't know who did this to you, my babies, but I'll find out. I'll make sure they pay. I'll make sure the world knows your names. I'll never stop fighting for you. I love you so much." Joseph helped her back to the truck, his arm around her as they drove back to Chicago. The city's skyline a gray silhouette against the snowy sky. The hum of the engine a low drone that did little to drown out Evelyn's thoughts. Her mind replaying the sight of the ditch, the feel of the snow beneath her knees, the weight of her guilt a constant companion as she wondered if she could have done something, anything, to save her girls. She thought of Elton Vale, the man who'd lived so close, who'd watched her daughter with eyes that now seemed predatory, and her resolve hardened, her grief a fuel that burned brighter than her fear, her love for her daughters a light that refused to be extinguished, even in the face of such darkness. Roland sat at his desk that evening, his notebook open, his mind racing with the day's findings. Elton Vale's denial, the lack of evidence in his home, the whispers of his obsession, the Lifta and Jalousie that might have driven him to kill, the other motivin that still lingered, lust and rake, a tapestry of possibilities that refused to come into focus. He thought of Evelyn, her trip to Willow Springs, her determination to keep fighting, and he vowed to do the same, to follow every lead, to find the truth, no matter how long it took. But as he stared at the map on his wall, the red pins a stark reminder of the girls' journey from the theater to their graves, He felt the weight of the mystery pressing down on him, the killer still out there, hidden in the shadows of a city that held its secrets close, a city that might never give up the truth. Detective Roland Ashwood stood in the dimly lit squad room of the 9th District Station in Chicago, the air thick with the scent of stale coffee and cigarette smoke, the walls lined with maps and photographs that told the story of the Grimes sisters' murder, a case that had consumed his every waking moment for over a month. It was February 3rd, 1957, 12 days since the bodies of Barbara, 15, and Patricia, 13, had been found in a snowy ditch in Willow Springs, their deaths a mystery that refused to yield its secrets, their killer a shadow in the city's underbelly, taunting Roland with every dead end, every false lead, every moment of silence that stretched the investigation to its breaking point. At 42, Roland felt the weight of the case like a physical burden, his dark eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, his hands stained with ink from the countless reports he'd written, his mind racing with the motivin that had emerged, lust from the possible sexual assault, rake tied to Victor Marwood's debts to the DiMaggio crew, lifta and jalousie from Elton Vale's obsession with Barbara, but none of them had led to a solid suspect. None of them had brought him closer to the truth. The investigation had taken its toll on Roland's team, their faces etched with exhaustion as they gathered around a table littered with files and photographs, their voices low as they reviewed the evidence, their frustration palpable as they recounted the leads that had slipped through their fingers. Sable Thorne's alibi holding firm, Benny Bedwell's confession retracted, Elton Vale's lack of evidence, the DiMaggio crew a looming threat, but without concrete ties to the crime. Roland's notebook lay open before him, its pages filled with notes that offered no answers, his pen tapping against the paper as he spoke, his voice steady but heavy. February 3rd, 1957, 9 a.m. We've got nothing solid, nothing that sticks. We've chased down every lead, every suspect, but we're still nowhere. We need something new, something to break this case open. We owe it to those girls, to their mother, to find the truth. That morning, a new lead came in from a beat cop, Officer Amos Wren, 48, who'd been patrolling the west side, his voice crackling over the radio as he called it in. Detective Ashwood, I've got something you need to hear. I was talking to a snitch, a guy named Tommy Vale, 16, works at the Brighton Theater. Says he's heard rumors about a bend in McKinley Park, a group that's been snatching girls off the streets, taking them to abandoned warehouses, using them for, well, it's bad. Roland, real bad. They might be tied to the Grimes case. You need to check this out. Roland's eyes narrowed, his mind racing with the implications. Lust as a motive, a bend preying on young girls, their operation a dark undercurrent in the city's streets, a possible connection to Barbara and Patricia's deaths, their youth making them targets for monsters who thrived on innocence. Roland grabbed his coat, his voice urgent as he spoke to his team. February 3rd, 1957, 9:30 a.m. We're heading to McKinley Park. We've got a lead on a bend, possible connection to the girls. They've been abducting girls. We need to find their hideout, see if there's any evidence linking them to the Grimes case. Let's move now. His team mobilized quickly, their cars speeding through the snowy streets of Chicago. The city's gray skyline a stark contrast to the darkness they were about to confront. Their radios crackling with updates as they converged on McKinley Park, their eyes sharp for any sign of the bend, their hands ready on their weapons, their hearts pounding with the hope that this lead might finally bring them closer to the truth. Meanwhile, Evelyn Marwood stood in the small church on South Damon Avenue, the air heavy with the scent of incense and the soft glow of candles, the pews filled with neighbors and friends who'd come to mourn Barbara and Patricia, their faces a sea of sorrow as they gathered for the memorial service Evelyn had organized, a moment to honor her daughters, to say goodbye, to find some semblance of peace in the midst of her grief. At 38, Evelyn felt as though her world had been reduced to ash, her gray eyes red from crying, her hands trembling as she clutched a photo of her girls, their smiling faces a memory that now brought only pain, their absence a void that seemed to grow with each passing day. Joseph, 17, stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders, his face pale but resolute, his voice low. They'd be proud of you, Ma, for doing this, for bringing everyone together. They'd want us to remember them like this, with love, not just with sadness. The service began with a hymn, the voices of the congregation rising in a mournful melody, their words a prayer for the souls of Barbara and Patricia, a plea for comfort in a time of unbearable loss. Evelyn stepped to the podium, her hands clutching the photo, her voice trembling as she spoke. February 3rd, 1957, 10 a.m. Thank you all for coming, for being here to honor my girls, Barbara and Patricia. They were my light, my joy, my everything. They loved this neighborhood, loved their friends, loved Elvis, loved life. And someone took that from them. Someone stole their future, but I won't let their memory fade. I'll keep fighting for them. I'll keep their names alive. I'll never stop. Until I know the truth. Her voice broke, her tears falling silently, her hands shaking as she placed the photo on the altar. A small shrine adorned with flowers and candles, a testament to the love she'd always carry for her daughters. Back in McKinley Park, Roland and his team raided an abandoned warehouse on 35th Street. A crumbling structure that reeked of decay and despair, its walls covered in graffiti, its floors littered with broken glass and discarded needles, a den of darkness that seemed to pulse with the city's underbelly. They moved quickly, their flashlights cutting through the shadows, their voices sharp as they called out to each other, their hands ready on their weapons as they searched for any sign of the Bend, any evidence that might tie them to the Grimes case. They found a makeshift camp in the back of the warehouse, a collection of mattresses and blankets, a few pieces of clothing that looked like they belonged to young girls, a chilling reminder of the Bend's activities, their lust a motif that made Roland's stomach turn, his voice low. February 3rd, 1957, 11 a.m. We've got something. Looks like a hideout, these clothes. They could belong to victims. We need to process this. See if anything matches what Barbara and Patricia were wearing. But the search yielded no direct evidence linking the Bend to the Grimes sisters. No red scarf, no blue dress, no fingerprints, no witnesses who could place them at the scene. The Bend's members long gone. Their operation a ghost in the city's shadows. Their crimes a stain that refused to be scrubbed clean. Roland's frustration mounted, his voice sharp as he spoke to his team. February 3rd, 1957, 12 p.m. We've got nothing concrete, nothing that ties them to our girls, but this Bend, they're preying on kids. We need to shut them down. We need to find them. They might still know something. They might have seen something. We can't let this go. He sent officers to canvass the area, their voices echoing through the streets as they questioned locals, their eyes sharp for any sign of the Bend, their determination a fire that burned through their exhaustion, their hope a fragile thread that refused to break. That afternoon, a new witness came forward, a shopkeeper named Walter Finch, 50, who owned a corner store near the Brighton Theater, his voice trembling as he spoke to Roland at the station. February 3rd, 1957, 2 p.m. I didn't come forward sooner because I wasn't sure, but I've been thinking about it, and I can't keep quiet anymore. I saw something the night those girls disappeared. I was closing up my store around 10 p.m., and I saw two girls, looked like sisters, walking near the bus. Stop on Archer Avenue. They were with a man, older, maybe 30. He was talking to them, seemed friendly, but I got a bad feeling. He had a dark sedan, dented fender. They got in the car with him. I thought maybe he was their father, but now, with everything that's happened, I wonder if he was the one, if he took them. Roland's heart raced, his mind seizing on the new lead, his voice urgent. February 3rd, 1957, 2:15 p.m., a man, 30s, dark sedan, dented fender, seen with the girls on December 28th. We've got a description. We need to find this car. We need to find this man. He could be our guy. Let's move now. He sent officers to scour the city for the sedan, their radios crackling with updates as they checked parking lots, garages, and back alleys, their eyes sharp for a car that matched the description, their hope a flicker in the darkness of the case, a chance to finally catch the killer who'd eluded them for so long. But the search led nowhere, the sedan a ghost in the city's streets, the man a shadow that slipped through their fingers, the lead a dead end that left Roland with more questions than answers, his frustration a weight that threatened to crush him, his voice low. February 3rd, 1957, 5 p.m., another dead end, another lead that goes nowhere. We're running out of time, we're running out of options, but I won't stop, I can't stop. Not until we find him. Back at the church, the memorial service continued, the congregation sharing stories of Barbara and Patricia, their voices a chorus of love and loss, their words a balm for Evelyn's wounded heart, a reminder of the joy her girls had brought to the world, a joy that had been stolen by a monster who still walked free. Loretta, 11, stood at the podium, her small voice trembling as she spoke. February 3rd, 1957, 3 p.m., Barbara and Patricia were the best sisters. They always played with me, they taught me how to dance, they sang me lullabies, I miss them so much, I want them to come back, but I know they're in heaven now, watching over us. I love you, Barbara, I love you, Patricia. Evelyn's tears fell silently, her hands clutching Joseph's, her heart breaking at her daughter's words, her resolve hardening as she thought of the motif Roland had mentioned. Lust from the Bend, rake tied to Victor's debts, Liefde and jalousie from Elton Vale, and now a man in a sedan, a new shadow in the case, a new possibility that might lead to the truth. The service ended with a prayer, the congregation filing out into the snowy afternoon, their voices hushed as they offered condolences to Evelyn, their hands gentle as they touched her shoulder, their eyes filled with the sorrow that mirrored her own. Evelyn stayed behind, her hands lighting a candle for each of her girls, their flames a small light in the darkness of her grief, her voice a whisper. February 3, 1957, for PM, I'll never stop, my babies, I'll never stop fighting for you, I'll never stop loving you, I'll make sure the world knows your names, I'll make sure you're never forgotten. She thought of the Bend, of the man in the sedan, of the motif that swirled around the case like a storm, and her determination grew, her grief a fuel that burned brighter than her fear, her love for her daughters a light that refused to be extinguished, even in the face of such darkness. Roland sat at his desk that evening, his notebook open, his mind racing with the day's findings. The Bend in McKinley Park, the clothes in the warehouse, the man in the sedan, the motif that refused to come into focus, lust and rake from the Bend, Liefde and jalousie from Elton Vale, the rake tied to Victor's debts, a tapestry of possibilities that offered no answers, no closure, no justice. He thought of Evelyn, her memorial service, her determination to keep fighting, and he vowed to do the same, to follow every lead, to find the truth, no matter how long it took. But as he stared at the map on his wall, the red pins a stark reminder of the girls' journey from the theater to their graves, he felt the weight of the mystery pressing down on him, the killer still out there, hidden in the shadows of a city that held its secrets close, a city that might never give up the truth. Detective Roland Ashwood sat in his office at the 9th District Station in Chicago, the dim light of a desk lamp casting shadows across the cluttered desk, its surface littered with files, photographs, and maps that told the story of the Grimes sisters' murder, a case that had haunted him for months, its weight a constant burden on his shoulders. It was February 10, 1957, just over a month since the bodies of Barbara, 15, and Patricia, 13, had been found in a snowy ditch in Willow Springs, their deaths a mystery that refused to yield its secrets, their killer a shadow that had slipped through Roland's fingers, leaving him with nothing but questions, doubts, and a burning sense of failure. At 42, Roland felt as though the case had aged him a decade, his dark eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights, his hands trembling as he flipped through his notebook, its pages filled with notes that offered no answers, its margins marked with the motif that had emerged, lust from the possible sexual assault, rake tied to Victor Marwood's debts to the DiMaggio crew, Liefde and jalousie from Elton Vale's obsession with Barbara, and the Bend in McKinley Park that preyed on young girls, but none of them had led to a solid suspect. None of them had brought him closer to the truth. The investigation had reached a breaking point, the leads exhausted, the witnesses unreliable, the evidence too thin to hold up in court. The city streets a labyrinth that hid the killer in its shadows, mocking Roland with every dead end, every false hope, every moment of silence that stretched the case to its limits. Sable Thorne, 19, the diner worker who'd been seeing Barbara, had an alibi that held firm. His boss Elton Vale confirming his presence at the diner on the night of the disappearance, his affection for Barbara a potential motive but lacking proof. Benny Bedwell, the drifter with a scar across his cheek, had confessed and then retracted, his alibi at a flop house on the north side verified, his involvement a red herring that had wasted precious time. Elton Vale, 45, the neighbor who'd watched Barbara with a quiet intensity, had been questioned, his home searched, but no evidence tied him to the crime, his obsession a chilling possibility, but nothing more. The DiMaggio crew, tied to Victor Marwood's debts, had been investigated, their hangouts raided, but no direct link to the girls had been found, the rake motif a theory that refused to solidify. The Bend in McKinley Park, preying on young girls, had been shut down, their warehouse raided, but no evidence connected them to Barbara and Patricia, their lust a motif that lingered but led nowhere. And the man in the dark sedan with a dented fender, seen with the girls on the night they disappeared, had vanished into the city, a ghost that Roland couldn't catch, a lead that had gone cold like so many others. Roland leaned back in his chair, his hands running through his hair, his voice a whisper. February 10th, 1957, 9 a.m. We've got nothing, nothing that sticks, too many suspects, too many contradictions, too many shadows. I've failed them. I've failed Barbara and Patricia. I've failed their mother. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep chasing ghosts. His team had been pulled off the case, their resources redirected to other crimes, their captain's voice firm as he delivered the news. Roland, you've done everything you can. We can't keep pouring manpower into this. The case is cold. We'll keep it open, but you need to step back. You need to let it go for your own sake. Roland had nodded, his jaw tight, his heart heavy with the weight of defeat, his promise to Evelyn Marwood, to find justice for her girls, a vow he couldn't keep, a failure that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Evelyn, meanwhile, sat in her home on South Damon Avenue. The silence of the house a stark contrast to the chaos of her mind, her gray eyes staring at the small shrine she'd created for Barbara and Patricia. A corner of the living room adorned with their photos, their favorite toys, the flowers from their memorial service, a candle burning softly in their memory, its flame a small light in the darkness of her grief. At 38, Evelyn felt as though her world had been reduced to ash, her hands clutching a letter she'd written to her daughters, her words a plea for forgiveness, a promise to keep fighting, her voice a whisper. February 10th, 1957, 10 a.m. I'm sorry, my babies. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. I'm sorry the police couldn't find him, but I'll never stop. I'll never stop looking for the truth. I'll never stop loving you. I'll never let you be forgotten. Loretta, 11, sat beside her, her small hands clutching her teddy bear, her voice trembling. Ma, are they ever going to catch the bad man? Are they ever going to make him pay for what he did to Barbara and Patricia? Evelyn pulled her close, her tears falling silently, her voice strained. I don't know, sweetheart, I don't know, but I'll keep trying. I'll keep pushing for them, for you, for all of us. The neighborhood of McKinley Park had changed in the wake of the girls' deaths, its streets quieter, its residents more cautious, their voices hushed as they spoke of the Grimes sisters, their tragedy a wound that refused to heal, a reminder of the dangers that lurked beneath the surface of their city. Neighbors had stopped letting their children play outside after dark, their doors locked tight, their windows shuttered, their fear a constant companion as they whispered about the killer who still walked free, a monster who might strike again, a shadow that cast a long and chilling pall over their lives. Some still pointed fingers at Sable Thorne, his reputation as a troublemaker a stain that refused to fade, their voices tinged with suspicion. I bet it was that boy, too old for Barbara, too rough, he probably couldn't take no for an answer. Others spoke of Elton Vale, his quiet obsession with Barbara now a dark rumor, their voices trembling. He was always watching her, always on his porch. What if he did it? What if he couldn't stand seeing her with someone else? And some whispered of the Bend, their operation a stain on the city, their lust a motif that made the neighborhood shudder. Those men taking girls, using them, what if they took the Grimes girls? What if they're still out there looking for more? Roland visited Evelyn that afternoon, his coat dusted with snow, his face etched with a sorrow that mirrored her own, his badge glinting in the dim light of the living room as he stood in the doorway, his hat in his hands. February 10th, 1957, 2 p.m. Mrs. Marwood. I'm so sorry, we've done everything we can, but the case is going cold. We've got too many suspects, too many contradictions. We can't make anything stick. I've been pulled off the case. But I promise you, I'll keep the file open. I'll keep looking. I'll never stop. Not really. Evelyn nodded, her tears falling silently, her voice a whisper. I know you tried, Roland. I know you did your best. But I can't stop. I won't stop. I'll keep fighting for them. I'll keep their names alive. I'll keep searching for the truth, no matter how long it takes, no matter how much it hurts. Roland's eyes softened, his voice low. You're stronger than anyone I've ever met, Mrs. Marwood. Your girls would be proud of you. I'll keep my promise. I'll keep looking. I'll never forget them, I swear. The years passed, the case of the Grimes sisters fading into the annals of Chicago's history. A cold case that became a footnote in the city's long list of unsolved crimes, its details whispered in true crime circles, its tragedy a cautionary tale for generations of parents, its mystery a puzzle that refused to be solved. Evelyn never stopped fighting, her life dedicated to keeping her daughter's memory alive. her voice a constant presence at police stations, at City Hall, at community meetings, her hands clutching their photos as she spoke. Her words a plea for justice, a demand for answers, a promise to never forget. She aged, her hair turning gray, her face lined with the weight of years, but her resolve never wavered. Her love for Barbara and Patricia a fire that burned through the decades, a light that refused to be extinguished, even as the city changed around her, even as the world moved on. In 2025, on March 22nd, Evelyn Marwood, now 106 years old, sat in a small nursing home on the outskirts of Chicago, her frail hands trembling as she clutched a photo of her girls, their smiling faces a memory that had sustained her through 68 years of grief, their absence a void that had never healed, their names a mantra she'd whispered every day since their deaths. Her room was a shrine to their memory, its walls covered with newspaper clippings, letters, and photographs, its shelves lined with mementos of their lives, a testament to the love she'd carried for them, a love that had outlasted time itself. Joseph, now 85, sat beside her, his own hands trembling with age, his voice soft. "Ma, you've done so much for them, you've kept them alive, you've never given up, they'd be so proud of you, you know that, right?" Evelyn nodded, her tears falling silently, her voice a whisper. March 22nd, 2025, 10 a.m. "I know, Joseph, I know, but I wish I could have found him. I wish I could have given them justice. I wish I could have made him pay for what he did." That morning, a nurse brought Evelyn a letter, its envelope plain, its handwriting unfamiliar, its contents a shock that made her heart race, her hands trembling as she opened it, her eyes widening as she saw a photograph of Elton Vale, the neighbor who'd been a suspect all those years ago. His face younger but unmistakable, his eyes cold, his expression a chilling reminder of the man who'd watched Barbara with a quiet intensity, a man who'd been questioned but never charged, a man who'd slipped through the cracks of the investigation. Tucked inside the envelope was a note, its words written in a shaky hand. "I know what happened." Evelyn's breath caught, her voice a whisper. March 22nd, 2025, 10:15 a.m., Elton Vale, "Someone knows, someone's out there. After all these years, they know what happened to my girls, Joseph. We need to tell the police, we need to find out who sent this, we need to know the truth." Joseph nodded, his hands reaching for the phone, his voice urgent as he called the Chicago Police Department, his words spilling out. "My mother, Evelyn Marwood, she just received a letter. It's about the Grimes sisters, a cold case from 1957. There's a photo of a suspect, Elton Vale, and a note that says, 'I know what happened.' We need someone to look into this. We need to know who sent it. We need to know the truth. Please, after all these years, we need closure." The officer on the line promised to send a detective, their voice steady. "We'll look into it, Mr. Marwood. We'll reopen the case. We'll see what we can find. I promise you, we'll do everything we can." Evelyn clutched the photo, her tears falling silently, her voice a whisper. March 22nd, 2025, 10:30 a.m. Barbara, "Patricia, I'm still here. I'm still fighting. I'll never stop. I'll never stop until I know, until the world knows, until you have justice. I love you. I love you so much." The case of the Grimes sisters remained open, its mystery a haunting echo in Chicago's history, its tragedy a wound that refused to heal, its questions a challenge that lingered through the decades, a reminder of the fragility of life, the persistence of love, the enduring power of a mother's fight for her children. The letter, the photo, the note, they were a new thread in a tapestry that had long been unraveled, a new hope in a story that had long been marked by despair, a new chance for justice in a case that had long been cold, a chance that might finally bring the truth to light, or might simply deepen the mystery, leaving Evelyn, Joseph, and the city of Chicago with the same unanswered questions, the same unresolved grief, the same echo of a tragedy that refused to be forgotten.